8:51 p.m. 6/21/2023. First day of summer. Walk 12. Fish in flower pots. Laura and Mary with Diane on her wedding day. Oh. Laura, on our last walk, I pushed you to talk about the happy things in your marriage when I was a kid, but I feel like I should let you open up about some of the bad ones too. Divorce is so hard. We've both been through it now, and I wonder now, as one divorced woman to another, and maybe without judgment or shame directed at ourselves or other people, we can talk about heartbreak. Diane, okay, where should we start? I'm going to move this and it's going to be loud. I'm trying not to make it loud. Okay. Laura, maybe when I was little. Mom, I realized that as a kid I heard more than I should have. To be honest, it was only about two topics, money and infidelity. That was all I ever heard. Diane, oh, I thought we hid that from you. When we got divorced, you were only 2 after all. Laura, yes, but I was around for the years of fallout. You kept fighting after your divorce, and I couldn't help overhearing it, whether it was about child support or a tuition payment. You'd bring up old resentments, and it would get into, how could you say that? You're the one that cheated. They were muffled fights that weren't always all that muffled. It was painful. And I say it now with no judgment because I know despite all the therapy, all the wisdom, I know there were things that I allowed my own kids to hear when I was triggered or angry. Diane, well, I'm sorry that you heard that, but it's true that he was the one who cheated, and it was hard to talk to him about money. Laura, you know a photo that I think about all the time? The one where Dad is pushing me on that fire truck he gave me. Diane, oh, you love that thing. It had a bell and you rang it over and over. Laura, yes, that's true. In the photo, you can see that my dad is proudly walking me down the street with my favorite Christmas present. I loved being with my dad. I loved that present so much. I might not have seen Dad as often as I would have liked, but I was so happy whenever he was with me. I only felt it as a special moment, but to me, that photo is a perfect example of how we choose to see only the good in images of the past, not the full story. Which in this case is that for the two of you, the sadness around the divorce was still raw, and you guys were miserable. And yet, I think you worked overtime to give me a loving home filled with playdates and fun. Diane, I'm realizing that we've still never talked much about your divorce. I never asked you before. Were you unfaithful in your marriage? Laura, no, I never cheated. Never, ever. Diane, I never cheated on your father. I don't remember cheating on any man in my life. Good on you, ladies. Laura, I cheated on somebody once. Never mind. Diane, okay, maybe I did too one time. Maybe. I'm not sure. Or I'm sure I haven't been perfect. Jesus said, don't throw the first stone. Okay, well, I retract my previous statement. Laura, I was with someone who I later learned was not free and clear, but I was told by him that he was free and clear. Typical. Diane, oh please, you're not responsible for that. Laura, no, I had a responsibility to another woman and I failed her. Diane, you didn't know. Laura, yeah, but you know, it's still shitty. And if we really want to know the truth and we are really looking, we can see it. I probably just didn't want to see it. I wanted to believe the story that sounded most like a fairy tale. Diane, you know the story about my father's mother, grandmother Hattie, and his father JJ cheating, right? My father's mother and his. Oh, okay. Laura, no. And there's an insert of the fire truck picture. It's really cute. Diane, they were living in Mississippi, and Hattie was pregnant with their first child. A neighbor called her on the phone and said, your husband's running around on you. He's meeting up with another woman tonight, and the neighbor told her where. Well, grandmother Hattie grabbed a shotgun and went out in a horse-led wagon. Soon she came across his horse and a strange horse tied up to a fence along the road beside some woods. She ties up the wagon and starts walking toward some breathing and gasping that she hears just a little way off. Granddad was on a blanket with a woman in the middle of going at it. He was interrupted suddenly by the light of a flashlight on his face and the click of a safety catch being released on the gun. Then he hears the voice of his wife say, "Finish." He says, "What in?" She said, "You heard me. Finish." And she said, "Now, mister, get up and zip up your fly. You started something else. You're going to, by God, finish. You started a marriage and fatherhood, and you're going to, by God, finish that. And miss, that's my man." She patted her gun and continued, "I'm a spiritual woman, but if I ever catch you with him again, it's in me to just blow your head off. Set it on a stump and walk away saying prayers. Now, husband, come on." She tied his horse to their wagon and drove home. On the way, he tried to talk to her, but she wasn't having it. When they got home, she refused to discuss it. She just sat down at the piano and played until she went to bed. The thing is, she never brought it up again. Didn't hold it over his head or didn't make a big deal about it after that night. I don't know any other woman like that. And if Granddad JJ ever cheated again, Grandma Hattie sure as hell never found out. They went on to have 14 children together. People are insane. Laura, wow, 14 kids? Is that a happy ending? Mom, if you'd only told this story on your first dates, no one would ever have cheated on you. Diane laughs. In 1992, I appeared on a talk show on the Lifetime channel called Attitudes. Two of my fellow guests that day were Susan Faludi and Gloria Steinem. Boy, it was a hot talk show. I talked about how upset I was made by some of the scripts I'd read and the sexist attitudes of so many executives I'd encountered. I shared a quote from the great Martha Mitchell, wife of Nixon's Attorney General. "When women stop competing against each other like dogs after a bone, then and only then will we truly be liberated." The whole audience went crazy cheering. Then I added to it, "No woman could ever catch her husband in bed with another woman if there wasn't another woman there doing it with him." And with that, the crowd got a little quieter. Yeah. Laura, yeah, no one wants to own their own role in these things. I've been guilty too. One time I spent the whole night with an ex-boyfriend crying over a breakup. I never slept with him, but my boyfriend at the time acted like it was a betrayal anyway. Maybe it was. Diane, well, kid, that isn't cheating. Laura, but it felt like cheating to him. It can be awfully hard to forgive that sense of betrayal, but you also don't want to be totally unreasonable. That is something so many of my friends have dealt with. Do we blame ourselves because somebody doesn't know how to deal with animal instincts or gets drunk? And do you throw away a long marriage because of one night? Do you save a marriage if he cheats 15 times? You have to look at what your boundaries are. All night with an ex-boyfriend crying over the breakup. Oh, he was pissed that she broke up with him because he cheated? Yeah, fuck him. Don't. Diane, you've had some rough breakups. The one where when you were engaged to Laura. Mom, I'm going to stop you right there because I don't want to hear his name and because I can't believe you're going to repeat this rumor. That's something that I never would have got. That's someone that I never would have gotten engaged or married to, and somehow you're believing the tabloids. And every time I read an article about myself, people say I was engaged to that person. The same way people always say I had some super sexy affair with John Cusack, whom I've never even kissed. I can't believe you're saying the engagement thing now. In spite of all the articles out there that say we were engaged, no, we were never engaged. I was engaged at 23 to Jeff Goldblum, very briefly, but I was too young to make that commitment and we both realized it. I'm very blessed to now call him a friend, and I adore him and his wife and his little boys. But that's it for engagements in my life, except the one that became a marriage with two beautiful children. Diane, well, why does everyone think you were engaged to him? I think it's Billy Bob. I'm not sure, though. I forget. Laura, I guess because he married someone else while I was off making a movie that didn't seem dramatic enough for people, so it had to include a broken engagement, too? Diane, I guess it was bad enough. Laura, yes. And to get over it, I went on a road trip with my amazing friend Jamie around the country, and we took a bunch of photos where I was flinging my arms out to the sides to say, as if to say, I surrender. This is me starting from scratch. Life starts over now. Diane, and once again, you're in a new phase now, one I know something about. Laura, that's right. I'm a 50-year-old woman who's had my kids. I would love to find a partnership at some point that is really committed and really sexy and really vital, a partner with whom I could travel the world. But I don't know that I need a marriage ever again. Relationships for me could be way more liberated and liberating now that I don't need any specific label from a man. I don't need them to give me babies. I don't need them to be my husband. I certainly don't need them to raise my children. I've done those things. So now I can have intimacy purely because I want to have connection, not because I'm looking for someone to have a family with. I already have my kids. It feels less daunting, freer, sexier. Diane, you deserve it. Well, I can't wait to meet the next man you fall for. Laura, I'll consider introducing you, but you don't have the best track record on that. Diane, what are you talking about? Laura, one of my first proper dates when I was in junior high school, a really cute boy asked me out. We came back after dinner, and I was so excited for you to meet him. I came down the hall with him and opened the door, and you were sitting in front of the TV watching the Ten Commandments, eating little ice cream bonbons. At the moment I opened the door, you had a bonbon in one hand and you were biting your other fist. You screamed, "Oh, God, no, the lions are eating the Christians." Diane, oh, yes, I remember. That boy was cute. What happened with him? Laura, I think you scared him off because he never asked me out again. Diane, well, I promise to do better next time. I'm so happy to hear you're open to dating now and that you have such a positive outlook. It took me a long time after my divorces to feel that way. They really threw me for a loop, and after each of them, I made some poor choices. You know, after your father and I broke up, I never should have married so quickly the second time. It was 1969 and I was in a bad place. I was in that off Broadway play One Night Stands of a Noisy Passenger with Bob De Niro. Laura, I don't think I've heard of that show. Diane, we were struck during previews, stopped from opening, and it was a real shock. There I was in New York, no money, away from my child. You were being taken care of by Grandma Mary in LA. I was depressed. And along came this really great, handsome guy, William Shea Jr. He looked like Jack Lemmon. We were both newly divorced and looking for love. Laura, how did you meet him? I never asked. Diane, Connie Denave took me to a Mets game and introduced me to Bill there in the box, whispering to me as she did that he'd also just gotten divorced. I didn't know that she'd already told him all about me and that our meeting was planned. Nevertheless, he was so vulnerable himself that he'd invited two other girls to join him, protecting himself. They were all over him, flirting, carrying on. One of the reasons why, which Miss Naive here didn't know, was that the whole damn stadium was named after his father. Shay? Yeah. Seems he was kind of smitten with me, and he said, "Let's go have a drink." I said, "Okay." We went out on a date that night and then went back to my house and we started kissing. Boy, could he kiss. He was a real southern smoocher. Those southern boys always kiss with a lot of passion, a lot of gentleness. He said, "Diane, now look, I know you just got divorced and I wouldn't want to lead you on. I wouldn't want to sleep with you and have you fall in love with me. I'm not ready to get married again." Well, that statement pissed me off. I mean, it really just bugged me so bad. I was challenged. I said, "Oh, really? You want to protect me? You're afraid that if I slept with you that my heart might float away? You know what? Don't worry about that." I kissed him and curled his toes, and then 2 weeks later he got down on a knee and proposed. Oh. There's an insert of Diane in One Night Stands of a Noisy Passenger. She's Laura, 2 weeks? He asked, and you said yes immediately? Diane, yes, immediately. It was like a scene out of Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. He got down on one knee, holding a beautiful ring right in the middle of the restaurant. It was so romantic. I was lonely, and my play was closing, and I said, "Okay." And then I thought later, what have I done? I didn't know him well. The next day I called him and said I had to go back to LA to be alone for a while and get some clarity. He ran after me within 24 hours. Shelley said, "Go talk to my therapist. You are running from real love. You have a man, a gentleman, who comes from a great family and he's gorgeous and he'll take care of you and he loves your child." Laura, what are you talking about? He hadn't even met me. Diane, right. Maybe it was. He would be a good father to your child. I said, "Oh, Shelley, stop it." She said, You're going to my therapist and I'm going to pay for it." And she took me to her therapist. I told him all my reservations. He told me that I was wrong and Shelley was right. He agreed I should marry this man. Laura, then 2 years later, you called a therapist and said, "Diane, I was right and you were wrong. Quit your job." Laura, you didn't do that. Diane, no. Laura, I wish you had. Diane, me too. Okay, so Bill was lonely too. He was a really lovely man in so many ways. He never should have been a Wall Street broker. He was a great composer. Laura, I liked his two sons, and I liked it when we were all together sometimes as a family, but I'm sorry. I had a really hard time with Bill. Diane, Laura, you were 5. The truth is, kids don't ever want their mothers to date. Laura, no. I liked many of your boyfriends, but Bill had all these weird rules. Like if there was one pea left on my plate, I'd be in trouble. Diane, I never saw him do that. I can't abide people who make others eat when they don't want to. Laura, are you imagining this? I got furious at my friend's husband for doing that to their daughter. Laura, I know. Diane, that's a terrible thing to do. I don't know how you remember much of him at all. When you came there to New York to meet him, you were 5 years old. We all went on a honeymoon together to Florida. Remember that? Laura, I do. Diane, with the boys and you and Mary, and oh my God, his ex wife was nearby staying with her family who had a home in Florida. That's part of why my honeymoon was in Florida in the first place, so she could see the boys. Laura, Mom, anybody who goes on a honeymoon with all the kids and brings her mother to take care of the kids and picks a spot so the ex-wife can visit? Who goes on a honeymoon? It was very considerate of you, but that marriage doesn't seem like it's made to last. Diane, well, that one certainly wasn't. He and I lasted less than 2 years. Laura, I just had a flashback to when, right in the middle of the chaos of that divorce, you got recognized on the bus. Do you remember? Diane, I think so. I was on that soap for a while, originally called The Storm Within. Then they got a sponsor, X-Lax, and The Storm Within, brought to you by X-Lax. That's fine. That wouldn't work, so they changed the title to The Secret Storm. I played a poor girl named Kitty Styles. I was a replacement for the original actress, so I was actually Kitty Styles' number 2. But I had a big following. Girls would flock to me saying, "Oh my God, it's Kitty Styles." Laura, right. So when you were going through your second divorce, we had to move from the apartment we loved to New York that we only lived in for a couple years. And so ended our stay on the East Coast. I went back to LA and that was that. Diane, oh, did you love that apartment too? Laura, I loved being a child living in New York. Riding big wheels with Belina down Fifth Avenue, skipping through Central Park, wandering through museums. It was so magical. How old was I? Diane, we lived there when you were 5, 6, 7. You went to Park Avenue Christian Day School. Laura, yes, and we went to museums, the opera. You took Belina and me to see Aida and La Boheme. At home, we would blast Free to Be You and Me. Marlo Thomas, I was taking ballet. And Drew and Scotty were very sweet stepbrothers. It was nice to have them around. You converted the office into an indoor jungle gym that I climbed all the time. I was obsessed with it. And we played on the roof looking out over the city. And I was obsessed with the PBS show Zoom. One day Ben Stiller came to a show of Ben's and stopped short when he saw Ben's percussionist, our buddy Leon. He said, "Oh my God, you're Leon Mobley from Zoom." Zoom had been a big deal for Ben in the 70s, too. Diane, but you were saying something about the divorce. Laura, divorce is never a blast, but I will say that that was a particularly miserable time for all of us, as I recall. And we've been away and had come back to New York to pack everything up. And while we were gone, one of my fish had gotten pregnant and had babies. We had 4 fish when we left, and now there were dozens. You and I bagged up all the fish. Diane, I do remember this. We didn't have bags. We put them in flower pots. Laura, that's right. And we took all those fish with us onto the city bus. Diane, why didn't I just spend the money on a cab? Laura, I had 2 pots. You had another, and we rode all the way downtown from 95th and 5th with water sloshing around. Big wheels in my puppy Central Park, the New York years. Wow. Wow. Diane, yes, but we didn't want somebody feeding our precious baby fish to a piranha. Laura, there we were on the bus. I was 7 holding pots and scared the fish would jump out. And then this woman came up and she said, "Kitty Styles." I thought to myself, oh my God, please do not talk to my mom right now. We are on a very important mission. And in a whole lot of ways, this is not a great time. Diane, that was a dark period in our lives. Laura, it's such a relief, Mom, to hear you talk about how overwhelmed you felt. The truth is, no matter what kind of divorce you're getting, you feel like this life commitment you've made is falling apart at the seams. It's such a lonely feeling, even if you're divorcing someone who's a co-parent or who you have a valued friendship with. I don't remember what you looked like in those moments with Dad. I was 2. That's why I have so many questions for you about what it felt like. Unfortunately, I'm asking them now, not 6 years ago, when I felt like I was the only person on the planet who had ever gotten a divorce. Every day was like living inside Pedro Almodovar's A Woman on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown. But I mostly hid it, as I think women often do. Even my closest friends who'd gone through divorces had hidden away at their most broken moments. But you saw my most broken moment. Do you remember? Diane, well, what are you talking about? All I remember is you working so hard to take care of the kids. You seemed very strong and together through all of it. Laura, no, Mom. Think back to the night you came over when I knew the family home was about to be dissolved and we'd have to move sooner than I thought. And the holidays were coming. I was going to break my kids' hearts. And I had to find a home quick and get a tree and create some sense of family tradition. You came over to advise me on how to do it. And at first, and first you started talking about money, which stressed me out. Then you referenced your second marriage, which we both have triggers about. And then you started telling me what I shouldn't be doing that I was doing. I can't remember what your advice was. It may have been excellent, but I started to tell you to stop telling me what to do, and that's when I blacked out. I'd been sitting on our 7 foot long, very heavy couch. The next thing I knew, I was holding the couch over my head. And yes, I threw it. I didn't throw a lamp or a small chair. I threw a 7 foot couch while screaming, "You have no idea what I'm feeling right now." Of course, you did have some idea. You've been divorced twice and were on your third marriage. But at that moment, I felt completely alone in what I was dealing with. Do you remember your reaction? Diane laughs. Honestly, no. Did I yell at you? I hope not. Laura, Mom, have you really blocked this out? It was only 6 years ago. No. Quiet as a church mouse. You walked into the kitchen and said calmly, "I'll make us some tea. I'll make us tea." And then you turned in the doorway, looked at me, and added, "Don't forget, Laura, you have scoliosis, meaning I shouldn't be picking up heavy things." Diane, ha, I'd forgotten about that. Well, I might have been worried for your back, but I'm quite sure I didn't blame you for throwing your furniture. Divorce can make anyone crazy. Diane, when you first fall in love with someone, you want to tell each other everything. And when you meet a stranger on a plane, you think you're never going to see that person again, and so you feel free to tell that person everything. But a relationship that lasts many years is something else. Emotions are very powerful. In a fight between emotions and logic, emotions win every time. And often you wind up cutting off both. The feelings are so powerful that you can't handle them, and so you pull away. It happens between parents and children and between husbands and wives. There are moments where you failed the other person by covering up something or telling a lie. Parents cover up all the time because we want our children to love and respect us. We aren't shrinks. We don't have a degree on the wall. We make it up as we go along. You're scared, and so you should shade the truth. And you want your child to do what you want your child to do. You want to maintain your authority. You want the child to respect you. I think there was a time when I lied and Laura realized it and yet was not in the position to confront me. And there are ways in which Laura has surprised me not being completely honest. We are all unknowable ultimately. On crime shows, the killer's mother says, "My child would never do that." But you don't know. On these walks, Laura wants to speak and hear the full truth. I'm pretty sure something's going to get said eventually that will hurt me. It's my job to try to take it gracefully. That's the parent's job, isn't it? I know there are things Laura could attack me for, and there are times she's wounded me too. What is worth bringing up? What will it help to talk about, and what will hurt too much? Oh my. Walk. 13. The haircut. Diane, I feel great today. Let's walk a mile. My lungs are finally healing. Laura, thank God. Diane, new tissue is being formed, and the scar tissue is going away. It's amazing. Unbelievable. Laura, one thing that I think could be interesting to talk about today is being mothers and being working mothers. The gift, but also the stigma of that. Diane, the stigma of it? Laura, yeah. Diane, what does that mean? Laura, The stigma for women of trying to be mothers while also working. That's something that your generation shifted so dramatically for so many women. When you were young, most people thought women couldn't do both. Diane, oh, I did both, but I never did really understand how I did it or how anyone does. Laura, I don't think I've ever thanked you for setting such a good example for me as a single mom. When I think back on the beginning of my divorce, the pain of splitting, the horror of telling my kids, the longing for it to be civil, and the prayer for co parenting or a friendship, I didn't reach out to you. I didn't ask those questions about how it might go. In that first stage, I was so afraid of the idea of the kids not having their dad living in their primary home the way I hadn't. But I will say that of all the things I was afraid of for them, I didn't feel terror about being a single woman raising kids, truly because of how strong you were in the face of it yourself. Diane, I don't think any daughter ever gave her mother a better compliment than that. That's lovely, Laura. Thanks. The compliment being she wasn't afraid of being a single mom because she saw Diane do it. And they both made it out okay. Laura, yes, in all things, you've always said to me, I'm going to do this. How? Who knows? But I'm going to figure it out. I'm carrying so much anxiety right now. I'm still feeling a lot of pressure even now. School stuff, track team, trying to get a job, paying the bills. I don't know how I'm going to juggle all this. Diane, oh honey, it's fine. Let's just walk to the next bench and breathe. Laura, you're telling me to breathe now? Look at how the tables have turned. Diane, oh sweetie. Laura, I feel like my daughter needs me, and frankly, I need her. We're lucky that now women in the workforce receive some accommodations. It's a fight, but sometimes we have the luxury of being able to have our babies with us on set. Diane, back in my day, you could never have a child on set. You hear these stories about Lucille Ball helping implement daycare at Desilu, but these were not conversations on the kind of independent movies I was doing. It was really hard, especially if you weren't the boss and if it wasn't being financed around you. Laura, remember even sometimes when you were the boss, it was hard. Think of Martha, our director on Rambling Rose. She was told to please not nurse her baby around anyone. Diane, they made her put a blanket over her head while she was nursing her child. Laura, and they asked her never to do it on set because they said the crew would consider her weak. Ugh, it's so fucked up. Diane, oh God, that's right. Unbelievable, isn't it? But it happened. Laura, a woman being able to feed a human being is a sign of weakness. It's infuriating. Diane, but a bunch of us complained and said we wanted her to feel safe on our set. Over time, those kinds of moments have really led to a change, but we had to fight for it. Laura, one day in season 1 of Big Little Lies, I so wanted to bring Jaya to set. She was 10 and she didn't have school and wanted to be with her mom. There was this little voice in the back of my head. It's a workplace. You want to seem professional. Maybe having a child around would be distracting. But I fought that voice because I know my kid and she's incredibly respectful of what I need to get done. I knew she could even help me run lines and be my assistant for the day. Diane, you were like that, a joy to have around wherever I took you. Laura, that's sweet. Well, the minute Jaya and I got there, Ree said, oh, fantastic, Jaya's here. My daughter can hang with her, and the boys were planning to go play basketball at the court nearby so they can all go. And then Nicole Kidman walked in and said, oh, great, my girls wanted to see Jaya. I realized that we had effectively created a Big Little Lies daycare. Diane, brilliant. Laura, that speaks to Reese's and Nicole's leadership as producers. Also, the whole show is about motherhood. We found a way to create a community where we as women were supporting each other in our families' needs as well as our work's needs. From then on, the kids were there anytime they wanted to be, and I believe that rather than hurting the show, having it be a family-friendly set helped it. We were better at our jobs knowing that our kids were safe and happy and welcome. Diane, it is so much better now, certainly. Laura, and yet, even though it's better now, it's still so hard sometimes. I wanted to talk to you about it because you had Grandma, and Grandma and you, separate from your mother-daughter relationship, were incredible partners in co-parenting me after you and Dad divorced. I was so grateful for it, and she was amazing. Diane, absolutely. Laura, of course, there's such a difference between the mother daughter relationship and the daughter grandmother relationship, true? Your connection to Jaya is so different than your connection to me. Diane, of course it's different. You feel less worried you're going to damage the child and you have less responsibility. And you're at a place in your life where you're older and wiser. And you have less fear for your grandchildren than you do with your own children. Laura, and you've said that you've had your own resentments of your mother, as we all have those to work out with our parents. Diane, everybody does. Laura, you have a right to resent your own mother, and I have a right to feel only tenderness and sweetness toward her. I mean, she got a lot of the fun stuff with me because you were away working. It wasn't until I saw that same hurt on my own children's faces when I wasn't there because I was working that I really understood you. I can only hope they come to understand it one of these days. Diane, they will, honey. They will. And you'll apologize to them the same way I am to you now, and what a gift you'll get if they receive your apology in the same spirit as you. Listen, there are a whole lot of women who did not work outside the home and poured everything into mothering and still bungled the job. True. It's also possible to be great at both work and home, but absolutely that pain is real. Laura, the most extraordinary and kindest parenting guide I've ever known was to a woman named Mary Hartzell, who created the magical preschool the kids went to. I was sharing with Mary that I knew what it felt like to miss my actress mom, and I didn't want to put my kids through that. And she very generously looked at me with her face filled with so much love and said, I don't know, Laura. Maybe they chose a vagabond creative life. Have you ever thought of that? Diane, that's lovely. Laura, of course, then the principal of another of the kids at school said, when the kids were little, it's hard for these kids because their father's life is so inconsistent, the life of a musician. They don't know when he's home and when he's touring. That must be so hard on you, but at least they have the consistency of their mother being there every night, giving them dinner, giving them their baths. And I said, no, my schedule's weird too. I'm an actress. And her face dropped. I saw a woman crushed with worry for my children. It was traumatic. And she didn't hit Ben with any of that, only me. Who was this? A principal. The principal didn't know Laura Dern is an actress? Okay. Diane, that's terrible. Laura, I'll tell you something. You were lucky. You learned more by being with me than other kids who had stable households. You got to go backstage, meet politicians, see people from all walks of life. You saw a lot more than others. You got an education, girl, and you got some wisdom from those lessons. Laura, I got to meet politicians. Is that meant to be a highlight? Diane laughs. Laura, look, Mom, you keep defending working motherhood. I'm not saying it's wrong. Obviously, I'm doing it. Most women have to do it. I'm just saying that it's not always easy. I was talking about my kids as principal giving me a hard time about my parenting, and you immediately jumped in to tell me that I had an awesome childhood and learned so much from all the adventures you gave me. Diane, I'm not defending it. I'm stating a fact. You've learned a lot from the life you've had. You've evolved, Laura. But once again, I'm trying to be honest with you about some real pain, and you're coming back at me with, sounds like you don't appreciate the amazing life you had. Diane, well, I did trust Mary completely. Laura, yeah, at least you knew I was safe with her. Diane, and that's worth every penny, kid. Laura, and I knew about one of our sitters. I knew that about, and I knew that about our sitters. Diane, yeah, that's right. And when I wasn't working, I came to pitch in. You could trust me too. I did my best. I did my best to do things right for you and Ben and the kids. Laura. Oh, and I just had a traumatic memory. Diane, what? What is it? Laura groans. I'm really glad you'd pitch in, but Diane, oh my gosh, what is it? I see a moan at the edge of your lips. What are you going to tell me? Laura. It's just what you said. You'd pitch in and get things done the way you thought was right. Diane, that's all a grandparent can do. Laura, what about when you cut Ellery's hair? Diane, oh my God. I can't believe you're bringing that up. One time when you and Ben were gone out of town and I was playing grandma, Ellery said to me, I wanted to get my hair cut. I set it in motion, and then you were so mad at me. Laura, Robert told me he should get a haircut. It didn't start with Ellery. It started with you guys. Diane, no, I didn't even. Laura, yes, you did. Diane, no. Laura, yes, Robert told him his hair made him look like a girl. Diane, well, it did. Laura, gross, Mom. Diane, was I even married to Robert then? Laura, yes, mother. Diane, are you sure? Laura, you were married to Robert before I met Ben. Diane, oh, that's right. I've been married to Robert for 23 years and Ellery's 20. Hello. And he was 6 at the time. So, Laura, this was 14 years ago and you're still mad about it? Laura, there's no statute of limitations here. You led the witness 100%. You made Ellery embarrassed. Diane, oh, please. Laura, thinking that boys can't have long hair is just so outdated, Mom. It really smacks of homophobia and gender bias. We should be raising our kids with a sense of freedom and openness toward their own self expression. Diane, woo boy. No, Laura, he asked for the haircut. Laura, you're such an actress. That's not true. And it was wrong. Would you want someone to tell you how you should look or what little girls or boys should dress like or be like? Come on. It's the 21st century. Your generation was rigid around gender identity, but his generation is so much more progressive. And, Diane, have you ever stopped to think that maybe you wanted a little girl at the time? And that's why you kept his hair so long? Laura, oh my god, I cannot believe you just said that. Diane, listen. He could have said, I like my hair. I don't want to cut it, but he wanted his hair cut, Laura. And I said, oh, you want to go to the haircut place with the balloons? He said, yes. I said, well, let's do it. And I took the child and got his haircut. God almighty, you and Ben went crazy, like I'd gotten him a tattoo. Laura, crazy? He was our baby. I'd like to get him a tattoo right now. Don't listen to your grandmother. Diane, he was almost 6. That's old enough to decide that he wanted a haircut. Laura, he had the most gorgeous convinced him to be embarrassed of it, and I don't for a second believe that he asked for that haircut. Diane, he did, Laura. On my breath, and I don't have that much left. He did, Laura. Laura, no way. Diane, that day I left your house in a huff, went and parked the car and sobbed my guts out. That was wrong of you. Laura, I feel completely I feel completely right about that actually. I'm still livid and I'm getting angrier by the minute. Diane, you treated grandmother wrong. You did. I would never have treated my mother that way if she'd cut your hair, and she did cut your hair many times. I didn't always love the haircuts, but so what? I loved her. She did plenty of things that I didn't agree with, but I never sent her away sobbing. Laura, yeah, well, you've got to get over that. I was devastated. It wasn't just the haircut, it was that you said he looked like a girl, and also that he shouldn't paint his toenails, which I loved. But you told him it was girly. Diane, I didn't tell him he looked like a girl. I said it to you, but never to the child. Never. Laura, then Robert did. Diane, well, hell, he's from Texas. What can I tell you? Laura, I know, but guess what? We're trying to raise a new generation of open minded kids who didn't have this stigma that says boys don't cry, girls need to speak only when spoken to. Diane, we agree on that. All of our evolution is 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And that step back's really rough. Laura, cross your legs, be a lady. Whenever people said that, you say, no way, I'll speak when I'm ready to speak. Diane, I've always said lady is a 4-letter word. Laura, how hard is it on boys to hear the message that they're not supposed to feel free to be emotional, and for women to hear that they're not supposed to have their own voice? Diane, never. I never said that. I'm an actor. I want grown men to cry. I don't think we're ever going to be on the same page about the haircut. I believe that it was not just about the haircut ultimately. Laura, hair for a man is a symbol of power. Laura, oh, it was definitely about the haircut. You're totally full of it right now. Diane, wow, 14 years later, it's still wrong. Laura, for the record, I feel completely right about what I felt that day. Diane, good for you. Thump your chest like Tarzan. He said to me, I want my haircut. He said to me, I want my haircut. Laura, you're a liar. Diane, don't you dare call me a liar. Laura, archaic conservative thinking. Diane, please, your liberal denial is. Laura, oh mom, do not bring politics into this. Diane, you said conservative. Laura, Ben and I were devastated. Diane, sighing, I'd like to go home now. Laura, me too. Okay. Diane, the haircut. 14 years ago, and Laura's still holding it over me. I guess that's the kind of thing that can never be put to rest. The only thing you can never, ever get to is for me to say, I think it was out of hand for you to be rude to your mother. And you can say you used us being away to do what you wanted to do with our child. You were wrong. I still think they were wrong. Ben and Laura thought he looked cute. I'd taken him for haircuts before, but just for a trim. 2 inches, they'd say. But then they were out of town, and yes, there was a meaning to my method, but I did not spur him on. but I did not spur him on. He really said to me he'd like to have his hair cut, so we did it. He looked great. They gave him a balloon. He was so happy. Then Laura and Ben came home, and Laura went friggin' nuts. It felt rude to the poor old grandmother. I left in a huff, and I went to my car and parked on the side of the road, and I felt sorry for myself and sobbed that my daughter could ever talk to me like that. I never wanted to see them again. I never wanted to set foot on their doorstep again. It became a mountain, not a molehill. They apologized later, but the damage had been done. Not a good thing. I was heartbroken. Laura got me on the phone and told me to come back that night. I can't remember if I did or not. It was so painful. I took that photo out of the scrapbook of my mind. Did Ellery want it cut, or did he just know I wanted him to want it cut? It's 14 years too late to figure that out, but it's still bothering both of us. Those things never leave your consciousness. You try to get over it, and so many loving, tender things take place in between the flare ups, and all you can do is hash it out and know where you stand and agree to disagree. This conversation may seem like a failure, but it's not. When you have old conflicts that go undiscussed, it's like riding an elevator that's rattling and that makes you feel unsafe. You don't know when it might just crash to the ground. These conversations, even if they're tough, makes those ropes stronger. They help you ride up and down in life with less fear of a sudden drop. So, I think that's an interesting little commentary here. I think that's an interesting insight. So Ben and Laura were off, and Diane had the grandkids, and kid said he wanted a haircut, possibly with the influence of Diane and her husband. If not Diane, then just her husband. I think Diane was in the wrong. It's not her kid. You don't just let kids do what they want. It's the kids' hair, but it's it's up to the parents. The kid needs to talk to the parents about moving forward with it. Uh, yeah, and they'll never get over it. If they put it in this book and it's still unresolved, they'll never resolve it. Doesn't mean they don't love each other, but I'm glad they put that example in here because it's real. Okay. Walk. 14. Our old street. Laura. Hey, I'm sorry the haircut came up yesterday, but I'm also glad. It meant a lot to me that you called last night to clear the air. It feels like there's nothing we can't talk about if we can talk about our old. It feels like there's nothing we can't talk about if we can talk about our old fights. Diane, it's true. Laura, the weather feels like a London day. So cloudy and there's a chill in the air. You know what that makes me think of? That time we stayed in London at some apartment near the Thames. It was when you were dating Al. Diane, I remember that trip. One night when we were out to dinner with Shelley, Omar Sharif came to the table. I had such a crush on him. Laura, after Lawrence of Arabia and Dr. Zhivago, who didn't? Diane, Shelley said, "Oh, Omar, I want you to meet my friend, a great actress." And he kissed my hand and said, "Oh, Diane Ladd, I'm such a fan of yours." Laura, Al was there for that? Diane, yes. You and he were both sitting next to me. You kicked my foot when he kissed my hand. I think you were scandalized. Meanwhile, all I could think of was, boy, I wish Al wasn't here. I was trying to break up with him. He was a cheater. He was a great man in his own way, but Laura, no, he wasn't. Diane, well, maybe not. He was certainly holding on to his problems. CEO of a big company, good-looking guy, could be quite a gentleman, but it turns out he wasn't such a good guy. Laura, certainly not. Diane, I was thinking this morning as I waited for you that it's very hard to see the truth or to see the sun when it's hidden behind a cloud. And you helped me try to remove the cloud to let the sun shine on us. That's all we can do. We've learned something from this ourselves, and I just want to tell you, I thank you for choosing me as a mom, and I love you with all my heart. Laura, that's lovely, Mom. Thank you. I love you with all my heart, too. Diane, and thank you for helping me fight for my life and prove that doctors, like anybody else, can be darn wrong. Laura, amen. Diane, and boy, have I had fun lately. I'm sure I'm glad I stuck around. Laura, I am sure glad too. Now you need to keep taking care of yourself, and given how strong you've become, I think we should go this way today. Diane, the sun is coming out. Getting emotional. The sun is coming out from behind the clouds, but it's still cold. Wait, why are we on this block? Laura, Mom, I don't want to freak you out, but I really think we need to do something hard today. You're strong enough. Diane, Laura, actually, can we go home now? It's getting cold. I'm freezing. My throat is clogging up. Laura, why don't you put your shawl over your shoulders? Here, I'll help you. And then let's walk this way today. Diane, Adelaide Drive? Laura, yes, Adelaide. Mom, this is our old street, huh? Diane, oh, yes. Oh my god, it looks the same. Oh, but honey, it is cold here. Maybe we should do this another day. Laura, no. Let's go see the old house. It's just down this way. Come on. Mom, I couldn't sleep last night. I was thinking it might be healthy for us to finally talk about the thing we haven't talked about all these years. Also, I haven't come and looked at this house in who knows how long, and I bet you haven't either. So please do this with me. Is this the house? Diane, oh, look at that runner go. Oops, let's step out of the way, his way, so he doesn't have to break his stride. Laura, hey Mom, is this our house? Diane, no. Wow, wow, it's really windy on the street, isn't it? I'm thinking I should go back to the car and pick up one more layer. She's stalling. Laura, the sun is fully out now, Mom. Diane, the sun is high, but it's still just too windy. Laura, is this the house? Diane, no. Laura, this is it, right? Diane, yes, Laura, this is the one. That's where your father and I got divorced. Laura, and where I was born. No need for the divorce to be the main memory. Divorce as a memory trumps even the birth of a child. Jeez. Diane, my God, it is a pretty house. The view here looks like a peep inside heaven, isn't it? Laura, yes. How gorgeous is that? Diane, before I got divorced, I really should have said, "Hey, husband, before you run off and leave me, you have to at least you have to at least buy us this house. It was only $150,000. It's worth millions today." Laura, millions? Yeah, California, Laura. Wow, but regrets don't serve us, right? Diane, it's cold. Let's leave. Laura, just a little while longer. Diane, I've got to be careful. I can't get pneumonia again. That was the last thing the doctor told me. Laura, you won't get pneumonia standing here 5 more minutes. We'll just look at it at the front of the house and smell the jasmine. Diane, I'm going to be in the hospital cussing you. Laura, well, let's not do that. Let's just look at this house a bit. It's incredible. Diane, Greta Garbo lived here before we did, you know. Laura, no. Diane, yes, so did Peter Lorre. Your dad and I used to laugh about it, whose vibes each of us picked up, Lori or Garbo. This living room had a stairway up to a loft that I used for a writing room way up there in the back. Laura, it's a craftsman, right? Yeah. Or Diane, yeah. I should have just bought that house right there. Laura, you brought me home to this house? Diane, I played in the yard with you out there. We were starting over with you. It was a blessing because your father and I had been through so much, Laura. We didn't have therapy or grief counseling back then. We could barely pay the rent and we were struggling. Everything was difficult. This was the house we moved to when we finally were able to get away from our previous home where we went through everything. Laura, I don't think I've ever heard you say her name in a long time. Diane. Diane Elizabeth. I don't know how everyone talked me into naming her Diane. Oh, they're talking about her sister that died. Generally, I don't like naming a child after a parent. I named you Laura because I wanted you to have your own unique identity, but I gave you Elizabeth so you and your sister would share a middle name. You were our new joy. I've held all this grief in. It's hard to get out, but I can't believe we've never really talked about it. Laura, I can only imagine how hard it's been. Diane, my girl, you are the blessing of my life. I owe it to you to talk to you about it. When one child dies and another child is born, I think it's hard on that child in so many ways. I was bound and determined to protect you. On the other hand, I was bound and determined to teach you to protect yourself. I'm sure I got the balance wrong. Laura, are you saying you were both overprotective and underprotective? Like your Richter scale may have been off. I think that might have been true, and my God, completely understandable. I'm sure it's why I never did drugs or anything too insanely reckless. I didn't want to give you more to worry about. I'm so sorry, Mom, for you and Dad. What immeasurable trauma. Almost from birth, I could feel that something devastating and heartbreaking had happened. Do you want to share more about that time? Diane, it hurt physically, like it does now that I'm sick. Sharp like a stab in the heart. Time burnishes the edges, but the pain never goes away. One moment you feel good inside, you trust God that there's a plan, and then the next your hope is all gone. I found myself trying to find comfort in poems and prayers. One about a child guardian angel I kept close by and recited over and over again. Laura, oh mom, go on. Diane, after your sister's death, I felt so much guilt. I felt guilt for not being there when she had that accident, for having a nanny who was too young and not watching closely enough. I found it hard to trust God. I trusted just enough to fight for you, hoping for another daughter, and here you are. That was faith. But so many people I loved have died. My ex fiance, Dr. Terry, friends Joan Shawley, Shelley Winters, Helen Thomas, Joe Bologna, Harry Dean Stanton, Marlon Brando, and so many others. But your sister, Laura, oh God, Mom. How you survived that, I don't know. Diane, 52 years. I held this in my lungs. Grief. Maybe that's part of why my lungs are hurting now. I held it in, just held it in, and now it's hard to get out. When a child dies, there is a spiritual cord that breaks. It is so shocking physically and emotionally, it rips through your body. And your father emotionally ran away from himself desperately. Ooh, he couldn't face it. And so then he ran away from us. If you lose a child, it's very hard to cope. We were struggling actors. We could hardly make it. We had to stay in the same house where she died because we couldn't afford to leave. His family could have helped us, but they didn't. Laura, oh, Mom, I'm so sorry. Diane, children are not supposed to die before a parent. The pain is indescribable. The pain is too raw. It never leaves you. It's the real reason why your father and I split up. We were torn asunder. The neighbors brought pie and cake, and that was so kind. And some friends were there for us, not that any kindness could make us feel whole again. It felt like having our hair pulled out by the roots. How do you pick yourself back up after that? It shattered us, and the years that followed were bad in every way. The first time I got pregnant again, I had a tubular pregnancy and almost died. We couldn't get out of debt. We had no time, compassion, peace, harmony. It was horror after horror. How the hell are you going to survive that? This town doesn't respect suffering. Your father and I were a mirror of each other's pain all the time. If you have money, you can pull the shades down and help keep the ugliness out. Sometimes people can make it through a tragedy easier when they have resources. You can hire people to help organize and plan. Laura, Dad told me that when he heard what had happened, James Whitmore immediately called and offered you and Dad work. Didn't say anything, just put you to work. Is that true? He got you both jobs and got you paid and occupied? Diane, yes. And we didn't even know him. Also, Tom called right away. One night he took us to the theater. Laura, by Tom you mean Tennessee? Diane, yes. He had a play opening and he took us to that and to dinner, your father and me. Laura, did he ever talk to you about grief or what you'd been through? Diane, no, he didn't have to. He already knew how we felt. He'd felt those feelings himself. He didn't have to talk, that we could just be together. Laura, I never heard that story. I find that so moving that he was just silently there for you. He just said, I'm scooping you up, we're going to the theater, and we're going to talk about art and have dinner after and just make it a beautiful night together. Diane, yes, he took us to the theater, a place of healing for all of us. That meant so much, especially because some people in the family, especially in your father's family, were downright cold and didn't offer to us any help at all. So you were asking about our divorce before, and that to me was the real reason for it. More than the cheating or any of the rest. I thought it was the cheating. No, it was a dead kid. It's awful. I didn't know how to deal with the pain, and your father did not know how to handle the death of your sister. He just withdrew. It always seems to me that he didn't relax with you until you were a day older than little Diane when she died. Laura, I guess I was the replacement child. I felt a responsibility to you and Dad and to Grandma and to try to make sure you didn't have to feel that pain again. I think I grew up with a lot of anxiety. I was worried about you guys. Diane, Laura, you were not a replacement. I know you think that we saw you that way, but we did not. I am grateful that I had your sister for the 2 years of her life before she was taken away. Thank God I got to have her in my arms. She was like you. At 18 months, she was beautiful. Y'all were both brilliant. Laura, oh, Mom, I'm so sorry. Diane, I can't look at this house without thinking of the end of my marriage. Laura, how exactly did it end? Was there one moment? Diane, I was up there one day writing away when my little voice said, "You want to know what Bruce is doing? He's on the phone with another woman." So help me God, I walked down those stairs and I picked up the other phone. I heard a girl giggling with him. Laura, uh-oh. Diane, Bruce must have heard the phone click. I heard him say, "Wait a minute. Diane? Diane, honey?" I asked in a shaking voice, "Who is this?" The girl gasped and hung up. Laura, oof. Diane, Bruce walked into the room where I was holding the receiver and I said, "Bruce, that's a wrap." For me, that moment was the end of our marriage, the last straw. Some people never divorce. I had hoped to be one of those people, but I just couldn't take it anymore. I went out and got in the car, and he ran after me, and he jumped in the car too. I said, "It just so happens I have an appointment with my therapist right now, and I sure need him." He jumped in the car and went with me. Bruce tried to do his number for my therapist, but my therapist was not having it. At one point, I'm not even kidding, he grabbed your father by the neck and pushed him up against the wall. Laura, your therapist? No, he did not. Diane, I swear to God, he did. And he said, "Boy, this is not your mother. This is your wife." That was it. I was done. He had given me my children. I had loved him. He was a great lover in his own way, your dad. For a moment in time, I couldn't even hate him. I was numbed. I was numb, burned, ashbound. Laura, Mom, Diane, I think your father and I could have stayed married if we'd been we'd been more evolved. We could have had a great life. We're still friends and work great together. Laura, how did you deal with the breakup? Diane, I remember I went out and bought him a beautiful blue suit, maybe unconsciously so he could find love again. I didn't want him to mourn for me. You've just got to let it go. If somebody wants to move on, you need to let them. Remember what Reese says to you whenever a man isn't treating you right? Dern, you're prime real estate. She's right. You have to remember that about yourself. If he doesn't see it, move on. And that's what I told myself. Laura, Mom, come on. This is me you're talking to. You don't need to put on a show of independence. The story doesn't even make sense. He cheated on you, so you bought him a suit and gave him your blessing? No way. I'm not buying it. I've been through a divorce. A lot of my friends have been through divorces. I know that's never how it goes. Tell me, what did you really do? Diane, well, I did really buy him a suit, Laura. I wanted to take the high ground, but fine. I was also jealous. And one time I went after that girl he'd been talking to with my high heel. I tried to take her eyes out. Thank goodness someone held me back. Laura, and there it is. Thank you. I think that's a little more relatable. Breathe. You know, I can't believe this was our home. Diane, I'm getting cold. Laura, here, Mom, take my jacket too. That shawl isn't enough. Diane, no, you'll get a chill. Laura, I'm fine. Let's just stand here and check your oxygen. It's reading 89. Diane, uh-oh. They say under 90 and I'm supposed to use my oxygen tank. Laura, okay. First, let's just stand in front of this beautiful spot and breathe. Trust me. Just close your eyes. Think about being in that home and think about the fact that you chose to put your faith in my father, which is a gorgeous act of love. You can't control what he does with it, but you got your children from that trust and faith and you built a family. Just like Dad always tells me, Diane and I will be great loves for the rest of our life because we made you. Diane, let's go. Laura, Mom, first, please try. Instead of first thinking about that home as I had a divorce in that house, maybe think, I became a mother in that home, or I rebuilt my life in that home. Silence. Laura, continuing. And Mom, after you split up, he moved out into the apartment building at the end of the block to stay close. Diane, I did get through it. Her life was a gift to me. I realized finally that her death had cracked me open like a walnut to get out the sweet meat of my soul. Then I wanted to be pregnant again so desperately, but when I did, it was a tubular pregnancy and I almost died. Then I prayed and studied about things that could help my body. The doctor said I could never have another child. So I prayed, and God answered my prayer, or you did, because you chose me, and He gave you to me. Laura, you want your oxygen? Diane, no, I'm fine now. Laura, yeah, you are. I'll go get the car. In my grief, a poem that touched my heart is Your Little Guardian Angel, is which the first 4 lines read. Your little guardian angel I am. My place is an angel in a secret land. I wasn't meant to live on earth just to touch your hand. I've been sent to touch your lives. And I know you'll think that cruel, but it's only special people that are chosen, except us, to the rule. Excerpt from Little Angel Unknown by Ronnie Hunter, modified by Francie Renmark, in, I think, Diane's cursive. And they requoted the quote. You know, I was thinking this morning as I waited for you that it's very hard to see the truth, or to see the sun when it's hidden behind a cloud. And you helped me try to remove the cloud to let the sun shine on us. My photo of Laura on her first trip to Paris. Diane. After yesterday's walk, I feel lighter. I went home and fell into my first deep sleep in a long time. I woke up feeling 5 years younger. After this conversation, I felt understanding and peace of mind. I still felt tremendous sadness and regret over Diane Elizabeth's death, but I also felt a new feeling, pride, that I'd gone on with my life and had not succumbed to grief. Laura gave me that forgiveness. She said, Look what you've accomplished. She took an arrow of pain and pulled it out of me. She did that standing there before me on the sidewalk. I'd avoided that block for a long time. She pushed me to go there, and as we talked in front of the old house, the layers of the past fell off like the layers of an onion. With nothing more than her love and her wisdom, I could finally see that yes, after surviving the unimaginable, I did okay. Life slapped me against the wall, but I came back. I worked. I had this beautiful second child. I have grandchildren. Laura taught me today that the wind blows, but eventually you'll see the sun again. You see that you have a treasure standing there next to you.